Just wear this. Jane grimaced, picking up the dress her mother had thrust into her arms, her eyes scanning it up and down as it hung on the hanger. A square-necked, form-fitting silk dress in a demure latte color, but with necklines both front and back that were cut low, perfectly designed to accentuate the wearer's figure. I even bought you shoes to go with it, what do you think? Mom's got good taste, right? Yeah, very pretty. They were indeed a beautiful pair of shoes, nude pink satin pointed toe heels with a 3-inch heels, just enough to showcase the allure of any woman's legs. Hurry up and put it on, what are you standing around for? Her mother gave a playful scold, swaying her curvy figure as she placed her hands on Jane's shoulders and steered her into the dark walk-in closet. Jane felt along the wall, taking a few steps forward in the dark. With a click, the dressing room lit up. The cramped, roughly 40-square-foot space was packed from top to bottom with shirts, dresses, coats, furs, high heels, boots, and purses for every season. This was her mother's kingdom, and she intended to groom Jane as the crown princess to inherit it. So, even though Jane had no interest in fashion, she was intimately familiar with this space. Cotton socks, trousers, and a sweatshirt were stripped from Jane one by one and tossed into the laundry basket, as the fluid fabric slipped down her undulating curves and enveloped her body. Jane frowned as she crammed her feet into the heels, took a deep breath, and pulled open the door. A full-length mirror, taking up an entire wall, reluctantly traced her beautiful silhouette before the owner of the body mercilessly closed the door, locking it away inside. The instant the walk-in closet closed, Jane's face returned to its expressionless state. Turn around, let me see. The skirt swirled, the sheen of the silk illuminating the hardwood floor. So pretty. Mrs. Smith raised her hand to glance at her wristwatch, her Voic immediately jumping up 3 octaves. Oh dear, hurry, I made an appointment with the esthetician for you, we're going to be late for your eyelash extensions. Hands adorned with both a diamond ring and a plain gold band grabbed Jane's wrist, and a series of crisp, staccato clicks of heels followed as she was pressed onto the treatment bed, her eyelids forced open. Mom, you don't have to go to all this trouble. Eyelash extensions make my eyes uncomfortable when I'm working on files at the computer. I've been telling you to change jobs for ages. What's wrong with helping your dad out at his office? I'm embarrassed to tell people what you do when they ask, her mother said, unable to stop herself from sighing deeply. How am I supposed to introduce you? Am I supposed to say that my graduate student daughter enjoys waiting on people hand and foot every day? The esthetician smiled and gently reminded, Mrs. Smith, please don't move, we're about to start cleaning. Mrs. Smith paused, relaxing her tense shoulders, but her mouth continued to fire off like a machine gun. The boy today is really good, he's got what it takes. Just be a little proactive, chat with him more when you meet, don't just add each other on messaging app and then nothing happens. No one likes being left hanging, right? Jane opened her eyes and emphasized in a low voice, Mom, my job isn't waiting on people hand and foot. Having hundreds of people asking you questions all day and having to answer them nicely, isn't that waiting on people hand and foot? The technician serving us now doesn't have to answer that many people politely all day, her mother said, unable to stop herself from raising her voice. The room went silent, and the technician's smile remained unchanged, as if oblivious to the awkwardness of being pulled into their conflict. I'm sorry, my mom's just mad at me, it's not directed at you, Jane apologized softly. Make them shorter, sparser, and preferably fey. WER. I wear glasses, and if the extensions are too long, they'll bump into the lenses and be uncomfortable. Of course, Ms. Jane, I'll give you a natural look, the technician replied kindly, glancing at Mrs. Smith's face before quickly adding, your eyelashes are in such good condition, you really don't need too many. Too many, too long, and they look fake, which wouldn't suit your naturally beautiful look. The technician quickly finished the eyelash extensions, and the makeup artist swiftly took her place, applying foundation and powder to Jane's face. Just do my eyebrows and eyeliner, I'm allergic to makeup. The makeup artist's hand froze, and she turned to look at Mrs. Smith for her approval. The mirror reflected a delicate yet radiant face, but the owner's eyes were calm, seemingly not at all delighted by her good looks. Her mother got up and looked at herself in the mirror several times. Although not completely satisfied, she could barely accept it. She nodded and lay back down to get a facial. Anyway, the kid already accommodated you and agreed to eat hot pot at the Oakwood Mall. You should reciprocate and put on a good show today. I know, I understand. Smile, and agree to every reasonable request he makes, Jane quickly added, reciting the demands her mother made every time she prepared for a blind date, before her mother could speak again. You child, her mother said with a laugh and a scold, her tense face finally relaxing. I've said everything I need to say, go on, I know you don't like hearing too much. Make the most of it. Oh, don't leave, let me have the driver take you. No, I'll take a cab. Stepping out of the beauty salon, Jane rolled her eyes at the sky and quickly pulled the hair tie from her wrist, tying her hair back in a low ponytail. She imitated her mother's tone, repeating, make the most of it, humph. After mimicking her, Jane laughed at herself first. She looked around, finding herself on an unfamiliar street. All right then. Casually slinging the purse her mother had forced on her over her elbow, Jane took out her phone and quickly searched for the hot pot restaurant's name on the map app, selecting the option closest to her home. Oakwood Mall or Riverside Galleria appeared in the search bar simultaneously. Which mall was it? It should be Oakwood Mall, right? Taking the side streets, Oakwood Mall is closer. Jane hesitated for a moment, then confidently walked into Oakwood Mall. On a weekday afternoon, restaurants in the mall were usually deserted. To be easily spotted, Jane directly chose a seat by the window facing the aisle and ordered her favorite broth. Ms. Jane, you're here again? Another blind date today? Is it a new guy? The only woman in the entire place not wearing a uniform walked over, leaning against the table opposite her and teasing. I'm giving you business, and you're still making fun of me? Jane raised her face, the dim yellow light from the overhead lamps falling on her, revealing the weariness in her eyes. The woman looked at Jane for a moment, then turned and went back into the shop. A moment later, she returned with a drink filled with various fruit toppings and placed it in front of Jane. Have some of this, you look terrible. Haven't been resting well? The state is here to inspect medical records. The department is on high alert, afraid of problems being found during the spot checks. All the medical records from the past 5 years are being re-examined. 8 people in the department have been working extra hours for 2 weeks, leaving at 10 every night. Even a fairy would have dark circles. Jane impolitely grabbed the cup and took a big gulp, the sweet and sour taste of the toppings finally bringing a smile to her face. The woman sighed. Yeah, we're all 30 now. Our skin can't handle this kind of abuse. As they were talking, a stylishly dressed woman walked in, her face deliberately wearing scheming makeup and dressed in a dress that oozed charm. Jane quickly said, "Go take care of your customers, don't worry about me." The woman went to greet the customer. 3 or 5 minutes later, a tall kid walked in. He was wearing a brown plaid shirt, khaki casual pants, and white canvas shoes. Because he was so tall, he instantly blocked the light as he stood in the doorway, causing Jane's face to darken, and she couldn't help but look up at him. Before she could see him clearly, the kid had already walked familiarly to an inconspicuous 2-person table diagonally across from Jane and sat down, scanning the QR code to order. Jane looked away, thinking, boys these days are really tall. Another 10 minutes passed, and she looked at the time, a look of impatience on her face. He was late for their blind date. Jane directly waved and ordered, "Start serving the food." The pot and ingredients were quickly arranged on the table, and a man in a suit carrying a briefcase walked in. The man entered, looked around, spotted Jane's back as she was happily eating with chopsticks, and skipped her. Then, confidently, he walked towards another woman whose table was completely empty. "Hello, are you the daughter of ma'am, surname?" "My mother and ma'am, surname, are classmates. I'm her son. My name is Jonathan Miller." The woman was holding a powder compact, touching up her makeup, and seemed startled by his words. She was stunned for a moment before bursting out laughing. "You've got the wrong person, haven't you?" The man awkwardly said sorry and quickly walked over to Jane and sat down. After seeing Jane's face clearly, he revealed a satisfied smile, but he still criticized her previous behavior. "Ms. Jane, it was too much for you to watch me make a fool of myself, and it's polite to wait for the other person to arrive before eating when you've agreed on a time." Jane swallowed the last shrimp ball, rinsed her mouth, and finally lifted her eyelids to look at the man. "Work very busy?" "Of course, there was another problem at the construction site. I had to go there myself." "So, you were comfortable being 47 minutes late. I remember my mother saying you had my phone number." Jane stood up and scanned the man from top to bottom, her eyes landing on his clean leather shoes. "First, I don't think you deserve my waiting. Second, if you're going to lie, at least get your shoes a little dirty, otherwise it's too insulting to my intelligence." Jane paid the bill with her phone, got up, and left. "Ms. Jane, wait for me. I really did have something to do today, even though I didn't go to the construction site." Ms. Jane. At the table diagonally across from her, the kid in the plaid shirt, who had finished eating the last bite, stood up. Before leaving, his eyes swept over Jane's seat. In the corner, a purse that matched the color of the booth had been forgotten. The plaid shirt walked over, stretched out his arm, pulled out the purse, and brought it to the counter. "Please look up the contact information for the lady who was just sitting there from the electronic payment records and ask her to come back and get her purse." The hot pot restaurant was quiet, and the only customer who could have been an audience member was still looking down, tapping on his phone screen with a beaming smile, completely oblivious to everything around him. "Okay, sir, I'll check the background transactions and contact the owner right away." A professional smile hung on the shop owner's lips, and she almost subconsciously gave the standard answer. Then, when her eyes landed on the small purse on the counter, she suddenly stood up from her stool, her sweet voice immediately becoming low and hoarse, and she cursed under her breath, frowning, "That idiot, always forgetting things." The shop owner grabbed another phone from under the counter, quickly opened messaging app, found a familiar name, and directly made a voice call. The pure female vocal in tone played repeatedly until it ended without being answered. The shop owner smiled apologetically at the kid in the plaid shirt. "Please wait a moment, she probably didn't hear it. I'll call again." This was repeated twice, and finally, on the fourth messaging app voice call, it was answered. Without waiting for the other person to speak, the shop owner said loudly, "Hurry back, your purse is at my shop, someone found it, you need to come get it and thank them." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone, then a helpless voice said, "Okay, I'll be right back." The plaid shirt turned on his phone, 10:43 a.m. The shop owner grabbed a bottle of juice directly from behind the counter, opened it, poured it into a clean glass, and placed it in front of the plaid shirt, smiling at him. "Thank you," the plaid shirt said politely, taking a sip. He unlocked his phone, opened a game, and started playing. The shop owner rested her elbows on the counter, leaning forward, her eyes fixed on the window. When she looked back, her eyes swept over the plaid shirt's phone, and she curiously glanced at it. She said casually, "Oh, I know that game, my best friend plays it too." The plaid shirt looked up at the shop owner, and the shop owner smiled and replied, "The one who casually leaves her purse here. She's really good at it. Every time the girls get together, she talks endlessly about things in the game." The hem of a dress swayed into the shop without making a sound, but the leather shoes of the suit-clad man chasing after her clicked and clacked rhythmically. "Ms. Jane, I've already explained why I was late, and I was genuinely working. Why do you have to be so petty?" A slender figure returned to the shop, with baggage in tow. The shop owner came out from behind the counter, hooked the dropped purse with her index finger, and poked it under Jane's nose. "Here, your purse, take good care of it." "Got it." Jane turned halfway around, reached out and tucked her hair behind her ear, and thanked the plaid shirt, who was playing games and looked as if it was none of his business. "Thank you for your kindness." "You're welcome." The plaid shirt glanced at Jane, quickly lowered his eyes, paused for a moment, and then said softly, "Your walking posture looks strange. If your feet hurt, you should change your shoes." "Miss Jane, you don't have to hire an actor to make me jealous, do you? I'm quite satisfied with you, you don't need to." The briefcase man didn't know what he was thinking. His face looked strange for a moment, and then he confidently smiled and stated his judgment. The plaid shirt turned off the screen, stood up straight, and instantly, the suit-clad man was completely shrouded in shadow. He was forced to look up at the plaid shirt, as if he was Wu Dalong pinned under Five Fingers Mountain. "Excuse me, you're blocking the way. I need to go back to school for class." The clear, gentle voice instantly grabbed Jane's ears. She eagerly looked up to see the plaid shirt's face, her eyes filled with joy. Her eyes lingered for a few seconds on the school name tag on the hem of the plaid shirt's pants, quickly removed the hair tie holding her hair back, and let her black hair fall down her back. Jane smoothed her skirt, licked her lips to make them look glossier, and then looked up with a charming smile and asked, "Are you from Hillside University nearby? What department are you in? What's your name? I'll send a thank you banner to the school to thank you. This purse is very important to me, you helped me a lot, I need to repay you." She looked up, her thick, smooth hair parting from her forehead, revealing her full forehead and rosy cheeks. Her bright eyes sparkled on her oval face, appearing particularly sincere and expectant. The plaid shirt looked down at the beautiful woman who was a head shorter than him and suddenly smiled. He pulled up his messaging app QR code business card and handed it to Jane. "Sure. I'm from Hillside University. You can write thank you, Sam Miller, Department of Computer Science on the thank you banner, and let me know when you send it so I can contact the department." "Okay." Jane quickly scanned Sam Miller, added him as a friend. She stared at her phone and asked, "Which Ming is it?" "Huh? Let me see," Sam Miller said, leaning closer, standing behind Jane, almost embracing her, and pointing to the fifth character on the screen, the Ming from Ming-Ji, remember? "Oh, that character." Jane quickly categorized and noted Sam Miller's business card, then opened her handbag, grabbed an A6 notebook with a cowhide cover, handwritten Sam Miller's requirements, and finally put the notebook and phone back in her purse. She said goodbye to Sam Miller and left, leaving a swaying figure in his sight. From beginning to end, Jane didn't give the suit-clad briefcase man, who was closely following her, a single glance. The suit-clad briefcase man's face darkened, and he called Miss Jane again and chased after her. Sam Miller reached out and pressed on his shoulder, and in the suit-clad briefcase man's dissatisfied gaze, he said calmly, "Being persistent is tacky." The suit-clad man's face turned even uglier. Sam Miller let go of his hand, walked around the suit-clad man, and entered the elevator. Jane had already disappeared, and the suit-clad man could only follow Sam Miller into the elevator with an unhappy expression. The mall's elevator was slow, and the suit-clad man looked Sam Miller up and down a few times. Then, looking at the elevator button that went directly to the basement level, he suddenly sneered and said, "Taking the subway back to school? That's right, that's the last stop for your school. Sam Miller, driving." The suit-clad man was choked by the answer, and turned his face away with a constipated expression. After getting out of the elevator, the two happened to walk in the same direction and stopped together in front of two cars parked side by side. A luxury sedan and a mini compact car parked side by side. The mini compact car was a light green to dark green gradient, and there were 3 cute anime characters on the left, right, and front covers. It looked like a little girl's car. The suit-clad man was certain of this in his heart and turned to look at Sam Miller with a smile. He deliberately pointed to the luxury car and asked, "Yours?" Sam Miller took out his keys, opened the car lock, and squeezed his long legs into the little girl's car. He started the car, turned to the side of the suit-clad man, lowered the window, patted the cute little car and said, "Mine." Then, the little car drove past the suit-clad man and left smoothly. "What the hell, how can a man drive that thing?" The suit-clad man looked like he'd seen a ghost, got into his car with a sullen expression, and stepped on the gas to follow the car in front. When he arrived at the entrance of the mall, the suit-clad man's eyes lit up, seeing that Jane was still standing by the road. She hadn't gotten a cab yet? God was giving him a chance. The suit-clad man quickly opened the car door and shouted to Jane, "Miss Jane, I'll take you back." Jane frowned and turned her face, but when she saw the car, her face changed from annoyance to joy. Instantly, the suit-clad man regained his confidence. Who wouldn't like a luxury car? The next second, the mini-compact car in front lowered its window, and Sam Miller raised his voice and asked, "Are you still waiting for a cab, Ms. Jane? I'll take you to the nearby station, okay?" Jane nodded in surprise, directly ignoring the million-dollar luxury car, opened the door, and got into the toy. She leaned closer to Sam Miller and said in surprise, "I saw this car in the parking lot when I came. It's so cute. It's actually yours. It's great to be able to ride in it. Are you going back to school? Then I'm going the same way, so I won't be polite." Hillside University and the nearby State Technical College and Crestwood Conservatory shared a location that formed an equilateral triangle. The area was filled with 2 shopping malls, 5 large fruit and vegetable supermarkets, 3 foodie streets, and a park traversed by the Circle River. Amazingly, it was also served by 2 subway lines, making it a very ideal place to live. Therefore, in order to have a quiet and scholarly living environment, developers had built several residential complexes here. Considering that the prices were almost the same as in the city center, people willing to spend that much money to buy a home here had very high requirements for living conditions. Sam Miller's eyes brushed over Jane's well-tailored dress and quickly looked away, thinking that putting her own wishes first and living in the university town certainly suited her personality. "There are mints and motion sickness medicine in the storage box. My driving skills aren't very good. Please bear with me." Sam Miller was still considerate. Jane quickly waved her hand. "It's okay, thank you. I don't need anything. I'll park the car at Willow Creek Estates in a bit." As soon as Sam Miller finished speaking, he attracted Jane's attention, but Sam Miller seemed to not notice and continued to focus on the road conditions. The mall wasn't far from Willow Creek Estates, only 5 traffic lights away, and even those 5 traffic lights were on the same street. The green light turned on, and they drove smoothly. In just a few words, Sam Miller's little car had already parked smoothly at the subway entrance. "We're here, Ms. Jane, go home." "Thank you, I'll wait to send you the thank you banner." Jane got out of the car, and the cute little car drove away before her eyes. She looked up, saw the subway entrance, and finally understood the previous question. Sam Miller had spoken to help Jane out, but he didn't actually know whether Jane's words about going the same way were true or false, and it would be rude for a single man to ask a strange woman where she lived after she got in the car. So, Sam Miller simply drove her to the subway station. Whether she really lived nearby or just wanted to get away, it was very convenient for Jane to get off at Willow Creek Estates. Jane clenched one fist and tapped it on the other palm a few times, the smile on her face unable to be suppressed. Are boys these days all so cute? Doing things so perfectly and being so careful. It seemed that sending just a thank you banner wasn't enough to express her gratitude. She had to think about what else to add. No sooner said than done. Jane directly searched for snacks that college students couldn't live without and took notes. Jane was busy recording the high-selling snacks she found, and laughed when she saw the list of names that appeared in her notebook. "It doesn't seem that different from what I ate back then." Walking to the entrance of the apartment building entrance, her phone, which had been idle for a while, rang with a noisy ringtone. Jane frowned in disgust and moved her phone away. First pressed the volume button a few times to lower the volume, then took a deep breath and put the phone to her ear. "I told you to make the most of the opportunity. Is this how you're doing it? Didn't I tell you that Chad is busy with work? You're holding on to this little thing and being so petty with him. You've made me lose all face." The voice on the phone sprayed at Jane like a machine gun. She remained calm and silently imitated her mother's tone on her end of the phone, her expression lifelike. The concierge guarding the apartment building entrance was amused by the expression on her face and asked softly, "Your mom?" Jane quickly nodded, and the concierge gave her a sympathetic look, quickly swiping open the pedestrian gate for her. "Thank you." Jane mouthed her thanks in an exaggerated way, quickly ran into the apartment building, and got into the elevator. The elevator blocked the signal, and her ears were instantly clear. Unfortunately, the happiness was too short-lived. The height of 5 floors was reached in an instant. Jane walked out of the elevator, opened the door with her fingerprint lock, and a German shepherd stood up and pounced on Jane, panting with its tongue out. Jane's cold face softened, and she lied calmly, "No, Mom, I didn't intentionally not answer, I was in the elevator, the signal was bad." "Then what about you giving him the cold shoulder?" "Mom, he's too ugly." The other end of the phone went silent. Jane put her phone on the shoe cabinet at the entrance, turned on the speakerphone, kicked off her shoes, casually threw her handbag on the ground, hugged the big dog, and walked barefoot into the bathroom. The reddish-brown carved hardwood door closed for a moment and then opened again. Jane had already taken off that cumbersome dress and changed into loose tank top and shorts, casually twisted her hair up in a wooden hairpin, and put on tortoiseshell glasses that covered half her face. "Jane, you should grow up and be sensible. What's the use of a man just being good-looking? Are you going to be like your father, who's still a failure at this age and completely relies on me to support the family?" Her mother's tone softened. "Baby, you know how difficult things were for our family a few years ago. Don't go down my old path." "Mom, the reason you're not happy is that you refuse to get a divorce. I'm not like you. I don't have a husband who needs me to make money outside, come home to do housework, and also provide emotional support. My life is very happy, very easy, and very free. You really don't have to worry about me." Jane was much tougher when facing her mother. The other end of the phone was silent again, and then her mother, as if she hadn't heard her, said to herself, "Chad is really quite good, he was even more satisfied after seeing you in person. Don't be too picky. I'll give him your address in a few days when he's free. You guys should spend more time together and get past your biases." Without giving Jane a chance to object, her mother quickly hung up the phone. Jane scoffed, called back, and said in a rapid voice in response to her mother's question of "What else do you have to say? Even if you suffer, you know to find someone good-looking for the rest of your life, and you still want to trick me into finding someone ugly? I don't believe it." She hung up the phone immediately, turned it off, threw it on the coffee table, and collapsed onto the sofa. The big dog immediately jumped onto the sofa and snuggled up to Jane's legs, whimpering softly and nuzzling her stomach. Jane stroked the dog's back, and the dog rolled over, exposing its soft belly to Jane, looked up at her, and stuck out its tongue to lick her face. Okay, I'm not unhappy, I'm in a good mood with General here." Jane leaned over and kissed the dog's nose, and the dog was immediately happy, frolicking in her arms. Jane played with General until it was almost dark, and the stuffiness in her chest finally dissipated. She patted her face, grabbed her phone, turned it on, ordered snacks and a thank you banner, and took the big dog downstairs to pick up the vegetables she had ordered to make dinner. In the living room, an old drama from over a decade ago was playing on the tablet, adding some liveliness to the empty apartment. In the kitchen, with a sizzle, oil splattered, and Jane skillfully tossed scallions, ginger, and garlic into a non-stick pan and stir-fried them, then added the other ingredients. A dozen minutes later, both pots emitted fragrant smells, making General, who was constantly circling around Jane, salivate. When dinner was ready, she put the portion without salt aside to cool slightly, then poured it into General's food bowl. She plated her portion and set it on the table, then reached out to adjust the program on the tablet and switched to a gaming live stream to watch while she ate. Before she could sit down, her phone rang again, and the different ringtone made Jane feel very relaxed. Anyone would do, as long as it wasn't her mother. She answered the call without any hesitation, but an annoying voice rang out on the other end. "Ms. Jane, there's no time like the present, you didn't eat well at noon. Let me take you out for dinner tonight. I guarantee it'll be delicious." The food in front of her instantly lost its original aroma, replaced by a revolting feeling of being disturbed. Jane said, "I've already made dinner. I can't waste food, so I won't go." The other end of the line immediately perked up. "Miss Jane even cooks? How about I come over and sample your culinary skills to see just how outstanding they are?" Jane frowned, slamming her chopsticks on the table. Raising her voice, she said, "Mr. Johnson, I've told you, I don't want any further contact with you. You're an adult, can't you understand plain English? Stop bothering me without any shame. I don't care what my mother told you about me, but I'm telling you for the last time, I'm not interested in you. I don't want to develop this any further, and I'm not even interested in being superficial friends. Is that clear enough?" Jane hung up. As she placed her phone back on the table, her hand slipped, hitting the plate she'd just brought to the table. The bottom of the plate, still wet, slid off the edge. "Ah!" Jane exclaimed. General, hearing her, turned his head and steadily caught the plate in his mouth, but the food inside scattered all over the floor. "Woof!" The General froze, looking like he'd done something wrong, helplessly still. Jane took the plate out of his mouth, patted his head, and forced a smile. "Good boy, General. You're amazing. You helped me save the plate." She looked at the food on the floor with regret. General immediately stretched out his tongue and swallowed the chicken leg and pot roast in a few gulps. The tile floors were licked clean, and Jane's dinner completely disappeared. She sighed inwardly. After General finished eating from his bowl, she changed her clothes, grabbed his leash, and said, "Let's go for a walk." A walk that could reasonably lead to the street fair. The street food was pretty good too, and she wasn't picky. Another one? Another one? The food stalls at the street fair were packed. A group of young people crowded around a makeshift long table, raising their drinks to one of their own. Jane squinted against the harsh lights and glanced towards the source of the sound, vaguely seeing a tall figure. She averted her gaze and randomly found a table to sit at. "Hey, can I get an order of kebabs, an order of cooked tendons, and a corn on the cob? To go." "Sure thing," the owner called back without turning around. A shadow approached, and General, who had been quietly sitting at Jane's feet, suddenly stood up and warned the person with a bark. The shadow stopped in place. "Hey, you're here for a late-night snack too?" Jane looked up. The handsome kid standing a few feet away was Sam Miller. The cheap, cold light outlined the kid's full forehead, high nose bridge, and plump lips. At that moment, those lips turned up, giving her a surprised smile. Jane couldn't help but return the smile. Walking the dog and grabbing a bite. Sam lowered his eyes and squatted in front of General, skillfully scratching the fur on the big dog's neck, making General whine comfortably. He looked up, his long eyelashes gilded with silver in the light. So beautiful. He is, indeed, Jane thought to herself. The street fair lights were chaotic, people coming and going, noisy and unbearable, but Jane seemed to hear the sound of flowers blooming when Sam smiled. Jane watched Sam Miller playing with the big dog on the ground, a faint smile rising on her lips. "All right, to go?" Jane snapped back to reality, grabbing General's leash. "Yes, still to go. How much is his table?" "I'll pay." "No need, they already covered it," the owner said with a smile. "Want me to take the skewers off?" "No need, just take it to go." "Here you go, be careful, it's hot." Jane reached out and hooked the plastic bag, turned to pull the dog leash. Sam Miller had already stood up, his eyes still on General, waving dramatically. "See you later." General wagged his tail happily. Jane turned her head. "Goodbye." Jane also bought latte and fruit along the way, disappearing into the street fair. Sam Miller stood still, slowly lowering his hand, waiting until her figure completely disappeared before returning to his seat. The young people sitting with him exchanged glances, conveying something only they knew. Sam Miller pretended not to notice, picked up a boiled peanut from the plate, pinched open the softened shell, peeled out 2 peanut kernels, and smiled as he looked at the plump, white nuts. "All right, stop giving me those looks." She's not my girlfriend. She's coming to school in a few days. Don't spread rumors and cause trouble for her. Several college students quickly made zipper across the mouth gestures. A curly-haired student boldly asked, "Boss, if she's not your girlfriend, then who is she?" "My savior." After a moment of silence, Sam Miller replied in a casual tone. The students gasped as if they were startled. The curly-haired one pointed to his heart. "Is it?" Sam Miller pressed his hand to his chest and generously admitted, "Yes, it's her." "What a fate." "Boss, you have to be grateful to her." Sam Miller nodded with a smile. After the students were full, he sent them back to school and turned to walk off campus. He lived outside. Passing a fruit and vegetable supermarket, Sam Miller went in for a walk and came out carrying several kinds of fruits and vegetables, a bag of pot roast, and a large box of yogurt. The concierge at Willow Creek Estates saw Sam Miller and greeted him enthusiastically. "Back again? You buy groceries every day, kid. You're really diligent." "Yeah, cooking myself is cleaner," Sam Miller said with a smile, opening his shopping bag to show the guard. "That's right. The stuff outside is all gutter oil and pre-made meals. How can it compare to good home-cooked food?" The concierge leaned over, seeing the many ingredients inside. "You're a big eater. No wonder you buy groceries every day." "I used to eat this much when I was young, but now I'm old and can't eat anymore." Sam Miller exchanged a few words with the concierge and entered Willow Creek Estates, following the stone-paved ground into the nearest building. Entering the apartment building entrance, the lobby was spacious. Inside the floor-to-ceiling glass doors and windows were several large flower pots, 2 feet in diameter, planted with large gardenia bushes. The gardenia grew to be taller than a person, blocking the light from the street lamps outside. The palm-sized leaves were green and lush, giving the empty stairwell a bit of warmth under the cold light. A piece of paper was conspicuously pasted on one of the flower pots. Sam Miller paused, walked over, and picked up the note. "To prepare for the fire inspection, please remove any clutter this week. Overdue items will be handled by the building management." Sam Miller put down the note and went up the elevator. A moment later, he came back down with a toolbox and a black plastic bag. The plastic bag jingled. Sam Miller put the things on the ground, took a deep breath, and carefully lifted the flower pot with both hands, gently placing it on the ground, then breathed a sigh of relief. He repeated this process several times until the flower pot was separated from the tray underneath. Sam Miller rolled up his sleeves and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He simply sat on the ground, pulled open the black plastic bag, and took out a pile of wooden boards and rollers. He used an electric screwdriver to screw the rollers onto the wooden boards one by one, then used quick-drying glue to glue the tray and the wooden boards together, and put the heavy flower pot back as it was. Sam Miller leaned against the wall, panting for breath. After putting things away, he tore off the note stuck on the flower pot and went up the elevator. The elevator climbed to the 5th floor and opened. Sam Miller casually threw the toolbox by the door, turned around, and returned to the elevator, pressing the 6 button to go to the next floor. The elevator doors opened and closed again. Sam Miller stood in front of the security door and rang the doorbell. A white-haired old woman appeared at the door and smiled when she saw Sam Miller. "Oh, it's you, Sam. I saw that the gardenia that the building management took from Aunt Sally's house had a notice on it, so I brought the note up." "What does it say?" "Let me see." Aunt Sally put on her glasses, stretched out her arm, and held up the note, finally seeing the small print on it. "I just paid the cleaning lady to help me carry it down this morning. How come the building management is telling me to move it back tonight because of a fire inspection?" Aunt Sally paused, then glared at the opposite door a few times, complaining in a low voice, "It must be the people across the hall who did it. They hoard junk in the common area, those piles of waste cardboard, right next to the flue, and it smelled like something was burning a few days ago. I called the fire department, and the young men came and gave them a lecture. Now they see me growing flowers and complain to the building management. Those flowers don't bother anyone, and they're not a safety hazard. Why do they have to make me unhappy?" No, I have to go talk some sense into them. Sam Miller stretched out his arm to stop Aunt Sally. Aunt Sally, it's late, let's talk about it tomorrow. Getting angry with people at night will make you lose sleep. I have to get it straight. I can pay someone to help me carry it back this time, but the flowers need to be taken out to bask in the sun. I can't spend money just to let them bask for half a day. That's not how money should be spent. Aunt Sally smiled bitterly. They're just bullying an old widow like me, with no children to back me up. Sam Miller said, I'll help you move it back. Aunt Sally's face instantly turned pale with fright. No, you just had surgery last year, don't lift heavy things. Sam Miller asked blankly, what heavy things? No need to lift, just push it back. Don't the flowers downstairs have trays with rollers? Rollers? I'll go downstairs with you to take a look. The old lady immediately changed her shoes and followed Sam Miller downstairs. Standing in front of the flower pot, Aunt Sally smiled, put her hands together, and bowed to all sides. The cleaning lady must have done it for me. Oh, I've really met a good person. She's worried about her child going to school here. Isn't our Willow Creek Estates a school zone? I'll use my tenant status to enroll her child in school. The old lady smiled and reached out. Now that there are rollers, I can move them up and down myself, that's great. Sam Miller followed, smiling, and accompanied Aunt Sally to move the flowers up and down twice. Before leaving, the old lady grabbed him for dinner. Eat pasta with me, I just made them today. Aunt Sally, Woof. A loud bark came from the elevator. Sam Miller looked back at the elevator floor display, the number gradually rising from 1 to V5, and then stopped. Sam Miller, who was still refusing Aunt Sally, changed his mind when he turned around. Then thank you, Aunt Sally. After entering the house and changing his shoes, Sam Miller pushed Aunt Sally back to the living room and went to the kitchen to start cooking the pasta. From the open window, he could faintly hear the sound of a woman playing and laughing with a dog. He smiled as he watched the plump, white pasta floating in the water. They were having fun, weren't they? He was also happy listening to them play. The phone rang, from gentle to exciting, and the woman sleeping on her side, embracing a pillow on the 2-meter-wide bed, opened her eyes. A purplish-red tongue with black spots immediately appeared in front of her. General, you woke up right on time. Jane smiled and propped herself up. She reached out and hugged the dog's neck, kissing the big dog on the forehead. The big dog immediately excitedly ran to the other side of the bed, biting the corner of the blanket, helping Jane, who was getting up, to smooth the sheets, covering the entire bed. Jane went to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, heated milk, boiled eggs, toasted a sandwich, a series of movements flowing smoothly. Jane walked into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and habitually instructed amidst the rushing water, General, keep an eye on things, tell me when the water boils. Woof. General agreed seriously. Jane smiled happily and put the buzzing electric toothbrush in her mouth. A few minutes later, after Jane finished brushing her teeth, washing her face, and applying essence and face cream, General trotted over and rubbed against her leg. Let's go eat. Jane massaged her face for another 3 minutes, tightened the bottle cap, went to the kitchen, turned off the gas, and kept rinsing the cooked eggs in the pot with cold water to cool them down quickly, peeling and taking the eggs. She kept 2 for herself, and cut the remaining 3 eggs in half, making sure they wouldn't burn General's mouth before putting them in his special bowl, along with dog food, cold milk, and freeze-dried beef granules. At the table, Jane enjoyed her weekly thick egg tomato tuna ham sandwich, 2 boiled egg whites, and a glass of milk. Under the table, General buried his entire face in the bowl, feasting. After finishing breakfast, Jane washed the dishes, and as she squeezed hand cream on her hands, General was at the door with the dog leash in his mouth, whining and urging Jane to take him for a walk. Okay, I'll get the keys, let's go. At Jane's command, General happily pressed down on the door handle himself and rushed out of the stairwell to press the elevator call button. Looking at the just right length, Jane admired General's intelligence and restraint for the countless time. Walking the dog every morning and evening was a routine. General was familiar with the process of going to the bathroom and playing, and Jane was also used to picking up after him and throwing it in the trash can. Having been trained from a young age and understanding the importance of discipline, the big dog took the initiative to go home with Jane when playtime was over. Walking into the elevator, Jane looked at the floors on the elevator button panel starting from 5, and was grateful countless times that the floors below were businesses rather than homes. Otherwise, the sound of the big dog's paws stepping on the tile floors would be enough to cause neighborhood conflicts for 300 days out of the year. Jane thought about random things and returned home. After settling General in, Jane walked into the bathroom again. The lustrous silk dress in the mirror was gone. Her shapely body was covered in ochre-colored slacks and a loose-fitting white shirt, completely concealing her curves. Jane pulled her long hair out from the collar. She tilted her body and skillfully braided her fluffy, curly, waist-length hair into 2 pigtails, braiding them so tightly that they had no style, hanging straight down her back. Then, she used a charcoal gray eyebrow pencil to thicken her 2 charming eyebrows, and applied a dull dirt-colored lipstick. Jane looked in the mirror, opened the eyeglass case, and finally put on her tortoiseshell patterned framed glasses, finally giving the woman in the mirror a satisfied smile. Old, unfashionable, and rigorous. Completely in line with her image requirements for work. Jane threw her phone and keys into her ochre-colored leather crossbody purse and stepped into her soft-soled ballet flats. Before leaving, she hugged General and kissed the big dog's forehead again. "Be a good boy and watch the house. I'll bring you something good to eat when I get off work." General affectionately nuzzled Jane, his eyes undisguisedly showing his reluctance to let her go. Jane was affectionate with General for a few more minutes before breaking away from the dog's retention. Before walking out of Willow Creek Estates, Jane took out her phone from her crossbody purse and glanced at the time. It was still 10 minutes before punch-in time, but her home was very close to Hillside General Hospital. Walking there, she would still have 5 minutes left to drink a glass of water. Enough. Turning a corner from the entrance of Willow Creek Estates, the noisy voices of people immediately filled the wide street, bringing Jane back from paradise to the human world. The light of happiness in Jane's eyes disappeared, she quietly took a breath, and her steps towards Hillside General Hospital were heavy. Several traffic police officers were standing at the entrance of the hospital, directing traffic. The vendors shrinking outside the gate of the big Hillside General Hospital looked around warily, their hands moving quickly to make crepes for customers. The hot iron plate was brushed with oil, and the egg liquid sizzled as it rolled onto the iron plate. Jane knew that in another 10 minutes, the vendors specializing in breakfast would pack up and leave, turning to the middle school 3 streets away to continue doing business with the students at noon. At 6:50, Jane entered the gate of Hillside General Hospital. At 4:20, Jane walked into the administration building. At 3:30, Jane stepped out of the elevator. At 3 o'clock, Jane pressed her work ID against the punch clock. Ding, punch-in complete. The work ID W. As held between her middle finger and forefinger, hanging down along the seam of her pants as her arm fell. Jane lowered her head to avoid the family members of patients waiting at the door and quickened her pace to the double-layered iron doors of the medical records room, swiping her work ID to open the door and slipping inside. 10 tables were placed facing each other, with an additional long table placed horizontally at the end on the right. 4 tables had computers on them, and the other 6 tables were full of personal items. The paper medical records that had been collected yesterday but not yet sorted were piled up like a mountain on the long table at the end. In front of the tempered glass window, 2 colleagues were manning the window. Looking back, the space of several hundred square meters below the 6 steps was filled with bookshelves dedicated to books, each filled with medical records of varying thicknesses. Sunlight streamed from the ground through the windows into the basement, barely illuminating the space where the medical records were stored. Jane walked into the storage room. The empty space in the innermost corner of the storage room was shielded by curtains printed with the name of Hillside General Hospital, hanging from a circular track on the top, isolating it into a dressing room. Jane stood by the dressing room, took out a white coat from the cabinet and put it on over her shirt. The unique cold feeling of the medical records room suddenly dissipated. She pinned her work ID to her upper pocket and sat down at her workstation in the last 10 seconds, turning on her computer. The man sleeping on the table frowned and looked up when he heard the sound of the chair scraping against the floor. He had graying temples, sleepy eyes, and sagging eye bags. Seeing Jane sitting in her seat, he clicked his tongue and joked, tapping the alarm clock on the table, "Jane, you're always just in time, aren't you? You're always so punctual, you won't let the office take advantage of you. Mr. Davis, did you work extra hours again this weekend?" Jane bent over and reached into the drawer, rummaging. The middle-aged man chuckled. "It's a government employee, free extra hours, for the country and the people." Ms. Johnson, who was sitting at the long table quickly checking the doctor's signatures and stamps, laughed and said, "The new young doctors in the orthopedic department this year are very skilled at performing surgeries, but I don't know what they're teaching in schools these days. The medical records they write are wrong from beginning to end. If Mr. Davis doesn't keep an eye on them and correct them, and they get forcibly archived and uploaded, when the Department of Health comes down to inspect and deduct points, our department will have to write an incident report." The kid sitting at the window moved, quickly turning his head to glance in the direction of Jane and the other two chatting, straightening the corners of his mouth. Mr. Davis smoothed his thinning hair on top of his head. "The Department of Health inspects every year. I'm not afraid of anything. What I'm afraid of is..." He raised his hand and made a fore gesture. "Every time there's a meeting, they say our department isn't working hard, assisting doctors in completing their work, reducing the efficiency of the doctors, and deducting our salaries." Mr. Davis smiled bitterly. "My twin children are in college. You know how difficult it is to afford students' tuition and living expenses these days. We can't afford to have $50 deducted." Ms. Johnson sighed along. "Yeah, kids can't even eat their fill these days with $1,500 a month for living expenses. Unlike when we were kids, $500 a month was enough for food, clothing, and phone bills." Ms. Johnson looked around, making sure no one was looking at them, but she still lowered her voice. "It's also fortunate that the kids these days are loose with their money. So Mr. Davis and I can earn a little on the weekends by helping those young people revise their medical records." "You're taking on work from this Hillside General Hospital?" Jane widened her eyes. Ms. Johnson chuckled sheepishly. "How would I dare?" Mr. Davis didn't say anything, grabbed a few medical records to look through, and started his day's work. Jane took out the medical records she had previously locked in the drawer and pushed them to Mr. Davis's desk. "Mr. Davis, these are the ones that still have problems after being revised. If you can revise them today, you don't need to have the Medical Affairs Department sign off on them." Not going through the Medical Affairs Department meant no money would be deducted. Mr. Davis thanked her profusely. "Thank you so much. I'll have my wife make pancakes for you one of these days, and I'll bring some for you. Jane, can you cover for me for a while? I need to go to the bathroom." The kid at the window turned his head and called out, clutching his stomach. Jane walked over and sat in his seat, taking over for the kid. The kid quickly took off his white coat and left the medical records department through the side door. The desk was scattered with patients' and family members' ID cards, receipts, and printed paper medical record originals that had been flipped through in a mess, and the printer was still constantly spitting out photocopied medical records. So careless, how can these be left out like this? Jane neatly gathered the ID cards together, folded the receipts, and put them back in the clear storage bag. She handed the receipts to the patient's family member through the window and instructed, "Here are Charlie Thompson's ID and receipts. Please keep them safe." The man outside the door quickly took them and leaned against the window, asking, "If I take these materials to the insurance company, my great-aunt's illness can be reimbursed, right?" Jane, who was organizing the photocopies of the medical records, paused and put the copies she was about to hand over to the side. Jane asked, "The patient is your great-aunt?" Where are her own children? Why didn't they come? They're too busy to come. There aren't many people working in their hometown these days. Today, my mom happened to be here to see about her back, so I'm helping her bring the medical records back. After answering casually, the man suddenly stopped, looked up at Jane, and retorted in an unkind tone, "What, is that not allowed?" Similar things happened every day, and Jane had experienced it countless times. The smile on her face didn't change. She pointed to a document hanging next to the window, skillfully flipped to the middle, and showed the content to the patient's family member, pressing it against the glass. "You see, the country has regulations regarding this. Because of concerns about patient privacy and safety, copies of medical records can only be obtained by spouses or direct blood relatives within 3 generations. You are not in this range. But since you can get the patient's ID card, the two families must be very close. Do you have your great-aunt's contact information? Tell her the situation and have her record a short video, stating her name, age, and ID number clearly, and also state the date, authorizing her great-nephew, that is, including your name, to pick up the medical records for her." As Jane spoke, she pointed to the wall outside the window with a huge messaging app number pasted on it. "See that messaging app number? Send the recorded video to that messaging app. We can receive the messages in real time. Once we see it, the medical records you want to copy can be given to you. Thank you for your compact curation." The man nodded after listening. "So it's that simple. The young girl before was being so difficult with me, and said if someone else didn't know." He suddenly stopped talking, and under Jane's gaze, which had lost its smile, he chuckled a few times and quickly changed his words. "I'll have my great-aunt record it right away, doctor, please wait a moment." The man turned his back and quickly retreated. Jane lowered her eyes and exchanged a look with the colleague sitting on the other side, who pursed her lips towards Jane's back. Following the guidance, Jane indeed saw the kid who had returned to his workstation. "You're back." The kid wiped his hands indifferently and said with a smile, "Jane, I'm back. Did that person leave? Then I'll take over. I'll call the next patient in." Jane made way for him, and at the same time stretched out her arm to stop the kid who wanted to sit down in his seat. "I know that you don't remember the procedure and colluded with the patient's family member to trick me, so please apologize to me." The kid froze, the two looked at each other, and the atmosphere in the department cooled down.